Sea level rise, another major problem, not just along coasts, but the report warns some low-lying countries could be wiped out.
So what would climate change look like for us in Washington? We got a preview just a few years ago called The Blob. King 5's Glenn Farley spent a lot of time covering The Blob. And Glenn, remind us what that blob was and why it's important.
Exactly, which was a fun word. This is not the movie of old, by the way. The blob was a very large patch of warm water that started to grow off our northwest coast in late 2013 and hung around for 3 years, noticeably affecting our typical weather patterns. Once the blob was over in 2016, things more or less went back to normal. Today's report warns the new normal could look a lot like the blob years.
It was during the reign of the blob that Washington state saw two back-to-back record fire seasons in the summers of 2014 and 2015. The winter of 14-15 saw record low snowpack followed by drought. Muggier summers bringing storms with more lightning. And this, the early blob, in red and orange. Water at times 4 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the Pacific is normally. A blob that kept growing.
This is kind of sobering just how much orange and red there is.
And this was state climatologist Nick Bond back in 2015, the scientist who led the study of the blob. At the University of Washington, he specializes in how the ocean and atmosphere interact.
It was an extreme example of a marine heat wave.
And here in 2018, what does the blob tell us about climate?
And so what was, an extraordinary case, unprecedented warmth in our waters off the Pacific Northwest, is going to be the rule rather than the exception. And so when we have warm events in the future, that's going to be completely uncharted territory.
Bond says the blob is not in and of itself climate change. There is evidence of other blobs before, and likely there will be blobs in the future. But global warming may leave us with what amounts to a much warmer Pacific on a permanent basis, a process that has already begun. Wildland firefighting agencies say fire seasons are now starting earlier and ending later. There are threats to agriculture. More warmth expected to lead to more insects.
There's no question that it has warmed over the last few decades.
And as it keeps warming, what can we expect?
And we've definitely seen a little bit more of a warm up again in the nighttime temperatures, both in winter and other times of year than in the kind of daytime temperatures.
Now, Bond says the differences during spring and fall have seen the least amount of change. It's the winter and summer, and in the summer, it's the nighttime temperature. So, for example, warming nights could impact our wine growing industry because they rely on that cold snap at night to make the kind of world-class wines that we make here. Again, quite a ways off, but what the UN says that this, I think, what they're indicating is that this is a lot closer than we thought.
It's still kind of scary. So is there any hope? I mean, what's happened since the extremes of the blob?
Well, there is hope. I mean, the fact is if you look at that record drought we had in 14-15, we saw very strong snowpack last winter, up 150% of normal in some places. So it's not like we're necessarily locked in, but the UN is saying we're not locked in to the worst of this if we do something about it, and they're wondering if we have the political will to do that.
Okay, Glenn, thank you.